benefit adjustments. So most of you have been carpenters for many years and you know how it works. Your employer is required to submit the employer contributions for the hours that you work this month by the 15th of next month. Okay. So the hours you work in any given month are due to the contributions department at the fund office by the 15th of the following month. We process pension a full month, if not probably more like 6 weeks ahead of time. So if you are working up until right before your pension starts, all of your hours are not going to be on file in the fund office before we do your initial pension calculation and process your first pension check. So what happens is approximately 3 or 4 months after your pension starts, the Retirement Benefits Department will automatically look for any additional hours that may have come in on your behalf to see if those additional hours generated any additional pension credit. If any additional pension credit was generated, and usually if this happens, it's like an additional quarter year or half year of credit, depending on the timing. The Retirement Benefits Department will recalculate your monthly pension to include those additional quarters, and we will process an adjustment to your monthly benefit, and we will give you any back money that we owe you for any pension checks that you already received. So for example, if you are starting pension in July, August, September, October, November, on or about your October or your November pension check, you want to watch and see if you see a little bit of a bump in your money on there. If so, it's because an additional quarter or half year or so came in on your behalf. Not only did we up the money that you're entitled to, but we also gave you the back money that we owe you for, July, August, September, for any months of checks that you already received before we processed the adjustment. It is also important to understand that the full adjustment for any additional quarters that come in once your pension is initially processed, that full adjustment is made to your monthly pension benefit, okay? We do not make an adjustment to the partial lump sum payment if indeed you've selected the partial lump sum payment. All of that money goes onto your monthly check. We do not send out like a supplemental lump sum check or anything like that. If indeed you are on pension and you are still doing some work, and our next section of the slides is talking about prohibited employment and what you can and can't do, in some cases, if you are 65 or 70 and a half and you're still working, you may still be receiving some contributions. Again, we'll talk about how in the next section. Okay. But we do an annual adjustment, a once-a-year adjustment for individuals who earn hours after their pension starts. And once a year, your pension gets adjusted for any additional credit that was earned in the prior year. That adjustment usually takes place in April, and it goes retroactive to January of that year. So, for example, you go on pension in 2022, and you're over 65 and you're working under what's called the 39-hour rule, and we will talk about the 39-hour rule in just a couple of slides. If you're working 39 hours a month, having contributions come in on your behalf, you have to be at least 65 to do this, okay? But if you're working 39 hours a month every month, by the end of the year, you're going to pick up an additional quarter year of credit that actually accrued to you after your pension started. So if that happens in 2022, in April of 2023, we will make an adjustment to your monthly pension amount for any extra 2022 credit you may have earned after your pension started. And that April adjustment is calculated for the April payment, but it goes retroactive to January 1st of 23. So on the April check, you'll see your money go up, plus you'll get back money for January, February, March of next year. So even on the pre-registration form where we had a section that said, is there anything else we should know about you? Several of you registered for the webinar today put in some questions about prohibited employment and what type of employment is allowed while you're drawing your pension and what you need to do to start your pension, or actually what you need to stop doing in order to start your pension. So the plan rules comply with IRS regulations. And there's a two-part criteria under both the plan rules and the IRS regulations. So in order to start your pension, the first part of the two-part criteria is that you have to stop working in any capacity, with any employer who is signatory to the pension fund. And you must not have an intent to return to employment with any signatory employer. So if you're working for XYZ Construction Company, and if XYZ Construction is a contributing employer, it's not enough to just stop working with the tools for XYZ Construction. You have to stop working completely for any company that is signatory to the fund. So you can't even be a truck driver or a messenger for a signatory company. You have to completely stop working for a signatory employer and not intend to return to employment with a signatory employer. Okay. And then the second part of the requirement is that you cannot be working in any type of prohibited employment, whether or not that employment is with a signatory employer. If you stop working, do you have to apply for pension benefits right away? And the answer is no, you don't. You can stop working, but wait to apply and receive your pension benefits at a later date. So there has to be the first bullet point back here is that you have to stop working for any signatory employer. And that cessation of work has to be what the IRS calls a legitimate severance of employment. And a legitimate severance of employment means you really and truly quit. You don't have any kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge agreement with the company that, oh yeah, I'm going to quit today, my boss Bob, I'm going to quit today. And my wife and I are going to go on vacation down to Florida for 3 months. And then when I come back from Florida, you're going to rehire me. Okay. That's not a legitimate severance of employment. You have to stop performing services for a signatory employer and have no intent of returning to work for a signatory employer. Okay. Not even in a capacity that you think is not prohibited employment. My example a moment ago was, being a truck driver or a messenger for a company. There is an exception to the severance of employment rule that says that if you are at least 65, you're at least normal retirement age, and if you are not performing prohibited work, and we're going to look at prohibited employment examples in another slide, if you are not performing prohibited work and you're at least 65, there does not have to be a severance of employment. So this severance of employment, the blue box on the top, number 1, that applies pre-65. Once you're 65, there doesn't necessarily have to be a severance of employment, provided that you're not working in a job that is considered to be prohibited. So let's talk about what it means to be working in a job that is prohibited. Prohibited employment means that employment, self-employment, or other business activity in the trade or craft of carpentry or other business activity covered by a CBA. Okay. So I know I just read the definition off the screen, but there's really not a better way to say it. Prior to age 65, you may not work in any of this type of employment in any geographic location. So it's not just here in the Chicago area or here in the jurisdiction of the Mid-America Carpenters. It's anywhere across the country that has a reciprocal agreement with the pension plan. And reciprocal agreements exist pretty much all across the country. So you cannot be working in prohibited employment in any geographic area pre-65. Once you reach 65, you can work in an occupation that is considered prohibited employment for less than 40 hours a month. It's called the 39-hour rule. So once you're 65, you can go back to work in the trades. You can use the tools. You can be working in a supervisory capacity, whatever you would like, but you are limited to less than 40 hours in any given month. Okay? So when we talked about disability pension, we talked about the fact that the fund office looks at how much money you make in addition to what type of work you're doing. For non-disability pensions, we are just looking at the type of work you're doing, and we're limiting the amount of hours you can work at prohibited employment. So pre-65, no hours at all. Between age 65 and 70 and a half, you're limited to less than 40 hours a month. And if you're interested in doing this, called the 39-hour rule, there is a one-time form that you need to complete and submit to the Retirement Benefits Department to let us know that you're going to be taking advantage of this 39-hour rule. It's in the handouts. It's page P49 in the pension handouts. Once you are 70 and a half or older, in accordance with federal regulations, you can work as much as you want in any capacity that you want, and you can still draw your pension without penalty. So once you are 70 and a half, working as much as you want. We probably have a dozen or so retirees, 70 and a half or older, who are still working, who still have contributions coming in on them. Now, I seriously doubt that they're actually, out there, working with the tools still, but maybe they're working in some type of a supervisory capacity. Okay. So I'm keeping half an eye on the questions. I don't see anything coming through yet, but let's talk about some prohibited employment examples. Okay. So it is prohibited to work with the tools. Any employer at all, union or non-union, signatory or non-signatory, you cannot be working with the tools. You can't work as a building inspector for a contractor. You can't be a superintendent, a supervisor. You can't be a project manager. Okay, a lot of questions come through about that. In fact, I'm pretty sure that on the pre-registration form, somebody actually specifically said, can I work as a project manager for a construction company? And the answer is no, that is considered prohibited employment. Now, once you're 70 and a half, that answer changes to yes, because once you're 70 and a half, there is no more prohibited employment. But pre-70 and a half, you can't be a project manager, supervisor, or superintendent. You can't be an employee of the council, of the benefit fund office, or of the apprentice and training program. You also cannot be a member of the e-board. You can't be a delegate to either the council or to the Chicago Federation of Labor. You can't be a business agent, a trustee, or an officer of any local union. Sometimes there's a question about you're a member of the e-board or you're a local union trustee. You can finish out your term while still drawing your pension. If you were elected prior to starting your pension, you can finish out your term, but you cannot run for re-election. Okay. Now, this example, this list is not all inclusive. We're giving you the most common examples, the most common questions we get. The green box on the right, things that are not considered prohibited employment. Well, there's tons and tons of things that are not prohibited employment. I mean, you can go drive a bus, you can sell shoes, you can go serve ice cream at Dairy Queen. There's many, many things that you can do that are not prohibited employment. But if you're talking about things that would be related to the trades, it is not prohibited employment to be a building inspector for a state or a county or a municipality. You can be the inspector who comes in and reviews someone's home prior to a home purchase or a home sale. You are allowed to do sales. So you can work at one of those big box hardware stores and you can sell lumber or you can sell cabinets or you can sell flooring. as long as you're not the person going out to install those cabinets or that flooring or anything like that. Okay. You can do picket duty. You can certainly volunteer. We have several retirees who volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. They're not getting paid, but they're utilizing skills and expertise that they learned as a carpenter for a very worthwhile charitable organization. Okay. It's okay to be a draftsman or work with computer-aided design. It's okay to be a safety director for a company, even for it's okay to be a safety director. As far as ownership, you can commence your pension benefits if you are a passive owner of a construction company, and that would be pre-65. So if you own your own construction company and you're actively involved in the management of that company, you cannot commence benefits until at least 65. A passive owner, to start pension pre-65, if you're going to be a passive owner, basically that means, maybe it's a family business and the kids are now running the business here in the Chicago area, and you've moved out to Arizona or down to Florida or out to Montana or, wherever your heart desires, and you're fulfilling your idyllic retirement, and someone else is running the company here. You can still be the owner. But if you're actively involved in the running of that company, you cannot do that. That would be considered prohibited. You can be a corporate officer as long as you're not working with the tools. And it is okay to be a consultant regarding the viability of a project. If you are considering returning to work, or if you want a definite determination on a job, whether or not it would be considered prohibited before you start your pension, you should send a written job description, generally prepared by the employer on the employer's company letterhead. You send a written job description into the Retirement Benefits Department for review, and the Retirement Benefits Department will review that description and will respond to you in writing to let you know whether or not that job will be considered prohibited employment, whether or not it would cause a suspension of your pension if you're already receiving pension, or whether or not you would be able to start your pension benefit while still performing that particular type of work. Okay. That written description, it protects you and it protects the plan. And it's a really, really good idea for you to get a written job description, determination letter back from the plan, because 2 years down the line, we do some kind of an audit or review and we find out that you've been working all along, and you say, well, of course I've been working. I called the Retirement Benefits Department before I started my pension, and I talked to them about this job that I'm doing. And Jimmy down at the Retirement Benefits Department, or Susie down at the Retirement Benefits Department, said that this job is perfectly fine, so of course I'm still working. Well, it turns out maybe that you're doing something that we do consider prohibited. And we're going to tell you, okay, well, your pension is going to stop. We're going to suspend your pension benefit, and you're going to owe us money back for all of the months of pension that you received while you were employed in this manner. And you say, well, no, Jimmy and Susie said it was okay. And I say, okay, but there's no Jimmy and Susie working at the pension fund office. So I have no idea who you talked to. You have no proof of who you talked to. The written determination protects you and protects the plan together.